In February 2019, Julie O'Connor was sitting up in her hospice bed with husband Kevin close by. Before that moment, she'd undergone a number of different tests during a 3-year spell, which had all said that she didn't have cervical cancer. Unfortunately, though, those results proved incorrect, leading the pair to record a powerful message at the aforementioned facility. Hello, wonderful people. I'm Scott Leffler for WonderBot, and here is. After being told she didn't have cancer 6 times, this nurse shared an upsetting final message. Before we begin, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and click the notification bell for more amazing videos. A resident of Thornbury, England, Julie decided to visit her physician back in 2014 after noticing some worrying issues. From there, the doctors then examined her and claimed that nothing was wrong, ruling out cancer. However, that didn't signal the end of her troubles, as we're about to find out. By February 2017, Julie was still making frequent trips to the hospital, hoping to find some answers to her predicament. But about a month later, she looked to get another opinion at a private facility, where the diagnosis was finally made. Sadly, the Thornbury resident did indeed have cervical cancer. At that point, Julie started her treatment at the hospital as she tried to fight off the disease. Yet, despite her best efforts, she found herself in a hospice in February 2019. So, with her condition worsening, the deathly ill woman decided to record a video alongside her partner where they shared an upsetting message. Even though there have been countless advancements in medical technology down the years, cancer is still an incredibly prominent disease around the world. To give you a better idea of the numbers, the Cancer Research UK website unveiled a few statistics from 2018, and the figures were certainly eye-opening. According to the website, 17 million people were diagnosed with cancer in 2018. In addition to that, over 9.5 million individuals succumbed to the illness during that period as well. Meanwhile, Cancer Research UK also looked back on some previous records regarding a very specific form of the disease. Indeed, the charity shared a few statistics about cervical cancer on its website too. For instance, between 2014 and 2016, an average of 3,192 women were diagnosed with the ailment in the United Kingdom. The site then revealed that more than 850 sufferers died from 2015 to 2017. But that's not all. As it turns out, cervical cancer can be avoided if you follow the correct steps. In fact, Cancer Research UK claimed that over 99% of the diagnoses were preventable in Great Britain back in 2015. And there's a fair bit more to be said about the disease, as we'll find out. The cancer begins with a change in the cells in a woman's cervix, the area of the body that connects the uterus and the vagina. Once it's begun, the cancerous cells can be found in the deeper tissues of the cervix. After that, it might spread elsewhere in the body, particularly to the vagina, rectum, liver, lungs, and bladder. It's most common for cervical cancer to be an outcome of being infected by human papillomavirus. A vaccine can prevent this infection, and even if cervical cancer is contracted, its growth is only slow, so in most cases there's time to discover it and give timely treatment. Pap smear tests provide vital screening for cervical cancer, and because they catch it often, it's a lot less lethal than it might otherwise be. The disease is most common in women aged between 35 and 44, although 15% of instances are found in women who are more than 65 years old, particularly if they haven't been screened regularly. Unfortunately for Julie O'Connor and her family, she was one of the latest women to be diagnosed with the disease in 2017. However, when compared to some of the more standard cases, her story proved to be incredibly troubling. It all started some 3 years before as Julie saw her physician. Earlier in 2014, Julie ended a decade-long stay in Germany with her husband Kevin O'Connor and their 2 kids. They packed their bags for Thornbury, a small town just outside of Bristol, England. When they got back, the mom was keen to maintain a routine that she'd developed over the previous few years. You see, the hospitals in Germany offered smear tests each year, allowing women to keep on top of their health. Unsurprisingly, Julie didn't want to abandon that process after leaving the country, as things were slightly different in England. Due to her background as an NHS nurse, she would have known that there was a bigger gap between examinations there. So with that in mind, Julie booked an appointment at South Mead Hospital in September 2014. Before then, the mother had noticed some potentially worrying issues with her body, but those concerns were seemingly put to bed after the test. When looking at the results, the doctor said that she didn't have cervical cancer. Regardless of those findings, though, Julie's symptoms didn't clear up, emerging again in 2015. As for what she did next, the Thornbury resident touched upon her plight over the course of an interview in April 2018. During that conversation with Bristol Live, she looked back on a significant doctor's appointment. Julie recalled, "In 2015, I started to bleed, and I went to the GP, and she was a bit concerned when she examined me, so she referred me to Southmead. But straight away, doctors there said it's not cancer and took me off the cancer pathway. They said the test came back negative and they thought it was hormonal because of my age. They gave me tablets to take over the next few months," Julie continued, "and they said if that didn't work, I should go and get a cervix coil fitted. So all this took several months. Her condition still didn't show signs of improvement after that, so her physician sent her to the medical facility again. On that occasion, Julie was given a potential explanation by those at the gynecological department of the facility. According to them, she was suffering with cervical ectropion, which causes the cervix to hemorrhage blood. However, that assessment didn't go down too well with the nurse's doctor, as we're about to find out. Julie's physician was convinced that cervical ectropion wasn't to blame, yet her thoughts seemed to fall on deaf ears. Given what was happening, the mom of two eventually made a big decision in 2017, nearly 3 years on from that first test. She was desperate to get a second opinion on her worrying symptoms. Julie told Bristol Live, "From then on, I went back to Southmead Hospital every 2 months. But I was so sick and tired of the whole thing, so I decided to use the private health insurance I had to work with. I rang health insurer Bupa and then went to the Spire Hospital and saw one of their gynecologists." Following that decision, Julie finally got a definitive answer, bringing all of the uncertainty to an end. She continued, "Within 30 seconds of the gynecologist examining me, he said, 'It looks like cervical cancer to me,' and got me in for some tests within 2 days. I was really just in shock. We'd seen 6 doctors at Southmead over 3 years, and we had the conversation with them, asking, 'Is this cancer?' Julie added. It was really difficult to accept. Then the gynecologist told me the growth was 4.5 centimeters, 1.77 inches. I was horrified. Sadly, the bad news didn't conclude there. To begin with, the doctors believed that the cancer hadn't spread beyond Julie's pelvis, yet that wasn't the case. In fact, the disease had moved to her back and hips. As a result of her condition, the nurse then underwent both radiotherapy and chemotherapy treatment to stop it metastasizing further. Due to the treatment, Julie went on to lose the majority of her left thigh muscle, while her left hip also needed replacing. By April 2018, though, she knew that she wasn't going to get better. So on that note, the Thornbury resident made one last point during her interview with Bristol Live. Julie explained to the website, "It's too late now to cure me. I'm having chemotherapy and radiotherapy, but all they can do is give me palliative care to prolong my life. If they had caught the cervical cancer back in 2014 or even 2015, it would have been a completely different story. My main concern now is making sure that other women who had tests back then are aware that if they're having ongoing symptoms, they should challenge the results and get retested," Julie concluded. "The last thing I want to do is put people off having smears, but just to question things if you're having symptoms like I was." Some 10 months on from that interview, Julie's condition had deteriorated to the point where she was now staying in a hospice. Due to her situation, she and her partner Kevin wanted to share another message with the public in February 2019. The couple decided to film a short video from her room, airing their collective thoughts. As the video starts, we see that Julie is propped up in her hospice bed looking incredibly frail. Kevin is sitting beside her on the right, and he begins to speak to the camera. He says, "I'm Kevin O'Connor, and here's my beautiful wife Julie at the St. Peter's Hospital." Kevin continues, "This is after the last few years where Southmead North Bristol Trust failed to diagnose and mistreated Julie from 2014 to 2017. We've been campaigning for the last 2 years for a wider review into the cervical smear screening process." At this point, Julie's husband then explains why they wanted to film this message. "What we want to do is film this video to show all of the directors what they've done to me and Julie and our family," Kevin reveals. "And we want to ensure that this doesn't happen to anyone else. We hold them fully accountable, while the pathologist and the gynecologist, I hold them responsible. After Kevin's outpouring of emotion, Julie is then encouraged to share her thoughts as well. Despite being deathly ill at this point, the mom of two acknowledges the camera with a response. Due to her condition, she barely rises above a whisper, but her strong words more than make up for it. Julie says, "I think it took 6 attempts for the cancer to be diagnosed. It's disgusting that I've been suffering the way I have, and I continue to suffer." Just a few days on from that conversation, the nurse sadly passed away at the hospice on February 4th, 2019. She was just 49 years old. Before Julie's passing, she and Kevin did file a lawsuit against the hospital ahead of a hearing in January 2020. Over the course of that inquiry, the latter was given the opportunity to speak again. He subsequently detailed the moment when his partner was told about the severity of her cancer in the fall of 2017. Kevin told the inquiry, "At this point, Julie was advised the initial scan had been wrong, reportedly, and the metastases could be seen in the original imaging and should have been picked up at that time. I am extremely concerned that a proper, wider independent investigation has not taken place. The negligence is of a serious public concern and should scrutinize present and past decisions," Kevin added in his statement. "There may be other victims who have received false negative pathology reports and false gynecology clinician examinations at the North Bristol NHS Trust, which needs to be reviewed."